The lake of silence. The lake was still and quiet like it had been for many years. The wind made soft ripples on the water, and the sky above showed two suns, one bright and sharp, the other soft and pale. Beside the water sat an old alien named Goran. His skin was rough and thick with age and scars. His eyes were deep and yellow. Holding the weight of many years, he sat on a large, smooth stone with a fishing rod in his hand. The line barely moved. He had not caught anything for hours, but he did not carry. Goran was not here for fish. He came every day because this lake was the only place where his past did not follow him. The world had changed too fast for him once. He was a soldier, then a general, then a traitor, or so they called him. He had tried to stop a war, tried to make peace, and for that he was hunted and exiled. Now no one spoke to him, and he spoke to no one. The only sound was the gentle lapping of water, and the small clicks of his rod as he reeled it in slowly and cast. Again he liked this silence. It did not ask questions, it did not remind him of what he lost, but something felt different today. The air was not as still, the birds on the trees flew off too early, and even the fish under the surface seemed to hide. Then he heard it, a strange sound, like wind, but thicker, heavier, and then he saw it, a small craft breaking through the clouds, slow, and silent, and glowing red beneath its belly. It hovered above the trees, and lowered itself near the water. Goran stood up slowly. His knees ached, and his back protested, but he still moved like a warrior. Trained and alert, he watched as the door opened, a ramp slid out, and a figure stepped forward. It was tall, thin, and pale, but not alien. It was human. The creature stepped carefully onto the rocky shore, looking around like he was unsure if this place was real or a dream. His face had no helmet, no weapon. He looked young, and yet calm. Goran narrowed his eyes. He had not seen a human in years, and never this close. Not since the war. Humans were loud, dangerous, and full of energy, yet this one looked quiet. He did not speak. Just walked to the edge of the water, and sat near Goran, not too close, but not far either. Then the human finally turned his head and said, in a soft voice, "Are the fish biting?" Goran did not answer at first. He just stared, wondering if this was some trap, a trick, or a dream. No one came here, no one ever dared, but this human did, and now he sat like they were old friends. The human waited patiently, then looked at the water again. "I used to fish with my grandfather," he said. "He told me the quiet ones catch the best fish still." Goran said nothing, but his grip on the rod loosened. His shoulders dropped just a little. The human was not afraid, not even nervous. He was just there, not asking who Goran was, not demanding anything, just sitting in peace. After a long moment, Goran spoke, his voice rough like dry stone. "Only the small ones bite today." The human smiled and nodded like that was the best news he had heard all week. He pulled something from his bag. A second rod, simple but clean. He attached the line and tossed it into the water. Then he leaned back on his elbows and looked up at the sky. "This is a nice place," he said. "I'm glad I found it." Goran kept watching him, trying to read the reason behind the calm face, trying to understand why this human was here. Why now, after so many years of silence? Why today then? The human turned again and asked, "What is your name? If you don't mind me asking." The old alien hesitated for a moment. "Goran," he finally said. "And you?" "Leo," the human replied with a soft smile. "Leo from Earth, and you?" "Goran from nowhere," Goran answered, looking at the water again. Leo nodded like he understood, like he had been nowhere too. He didn't ask anything more, just sat and let the silence return. But this time the silence was different. It was not lonely, not heavy, it was shared. Goran felt something stir inside his chest, something old and forgotten, something like warmth or hope. And deep under the lake, something moved, something ancient and angry that had slept for many years, but now it sensed something had changed. The lake of silence had been broken, and the old warrior was no longer alone. The man with no weapon. Goran did not understand this human called Leo. He had expected questions, fear, even lies, but Leo gave none of those. He only offered quiet company and steady presence, like he had no reason to fear an old alien marked as traitor. An exile. The fishing rods lay still in the water, and the two sat side by side without speaking. For some time, the wind moved gently across the lake. The suns were starting to lower, turning the sky into orange and purple colors. Leo finally broke the silence by pointing to the sky. "I traveled far to find this place," he said. "Not many maps show it anymore. Some say it does not exist." Goran did not look at him, but his voice came low and slow. "Good, those who know it are dead or wise enough to stay away, and yet you came." Leo smiled, again not as a challenge, but with a strange kindness. "I came looking for someone who was once called the peacebreaker, but others call the peacemaker. I think you are him." Goran's jaw tightened. The title dragged heavy memories from his chest. He had once stood between two great fleets. He had chosen to fire, not at the enemy, but at the weapon that would have ended millions. He had ended the war by breaking the rules. He was cast out by his own people and hunted by both sides. Now this human knew the story. Goran turned to face him, his eyes sharp and cold. Why are you really here? Human, what do you want from an old ghost? Leo reached into his coat slowly, carefully, not for a weapon but for a small glowing cube. He held it out with both hands. My sister, she served in the medical ships during the war. She said one alien commander betrayed his own army to stop the massacre. She said he saved her ship from being destroyed and gave them safe passage. That commander was you. Goran did not take the cube. He looked at it, and then at Leo. Why come now, after so long? What can I give? You nothing, Leo replied. I only wanted to meet the one person who did not fight for victory, but for life. The one who made the hardest choice, because it was right. Goran laughed. A sound like cracked stone. If that is true, then you are a fool. I am not a hero. I am forgotten and hunted. I am nothing now. Leo placed the cube beside the old alien and leaned forward. Maybe that is why I came, not to honor you, but to remind you that someone remembers. Someone lived because of you, and that still means something. The words struck deeper than Goran expected. He had told himself for years that silence was safety, that forgetting was peace, but now this strange human had brought his past back to the surface, not with weapons or threats, but with truth and memory. They sat again in silence, not cold or heavy this time, but full of unspoken thoughts. Goran picked up the cube slowly and placed it inside his coat without a word. The sky darkened, the twin moons began to rise, and the lake glowed softly in the moonlight. Leo stood and stretched his arms. You live a long way from everything, do you? Have a place to stay? Goran pointed to a small cave under the ridge. Dry and quiet, he said. Sometimes I catch fireflies for light. Leo nodded and began setting up a small camp near the cave without asking permission, just moving like he belonged here for some reason. Goran allowed it. Maybe the years had made him soft, or maybe something about Leo felt different. As night fell, the fire between them crackled gently. Leo cooked something that smelled like herbs and bread, and offered half to Goran, who accepted without comment. They ate together like two soldiers who shared the same battlefield, even if they were once on opposite sides. When the stars began to shimmer overhead, Goran looked up and said, You have no weapons, no guards, no ship strong enough to defend you. Why do you trust me? Leo looked into the flames, and then at the old alien. If you were going to kill me, you already would have, and if I had come with weapons, you would never have spoken to me. Trust is all I had to offer, and somehow I knew it would be enough. Goran stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once. Maybe it is. Far away across the forest and hills, in the shadows of broken towers, a signal blinked on a silent receiver. Old tech alien code. A forgotten beacon triggered by the energy of the cube that Leo had brought. Its message shot upward into the stars and out into space. Someone out there received it. Someone who had not forgotten Goran. Someone who still wanted him dead, and now they knew exactly where to find him. A past buried in the water. Goran woke before the suns rose, their pale light still hidden behind the mountains. The lake was darker now, still as ever, but something felt colder, not in the air but in his bones. He stepped out from the cave slowly, his steps careful, his joints stiff with age, but his senses sharp like they had always been. Even during war, he saw Leo already by the water, skipping stones across the surface one after another. They danced quietly, then sank, without a sound. You sleep, little, Goran said as he approached. Leo turned and smiled. Sleep is a small thing compared to peace. This place gives me peace. Goran stood beside him and looked at the water. It does that for some, for others it hides too much. Leo paused and studied the alien face. He could feel that today was different. The silence was heavier, not like yesterday, when it had been shared, but now, as if something deep under the lake had awakened. Goran sat again on his usual stone, but this time he did not pick up the fishing rod. Instead, he stared into the reflection of his face, rippling in the water. It looked old, yes, but also haunted. He knew the moment would come when silence was not enough, when truth demanded voice. Again, without looking at Leo, he began to speak soft and low. This lake was once a battlefield, long before the trees grew back, before the water cleared. My people built weapons here, deep under the surface, machines that could tear through cities. When I first came here, I was sent to guard the place. I followed orders. I believed in the war until I met the prisoners. They were not fighters, just farmers and children. We captured them and locked them in chambers below the lake, like animals. Leo said nothing. He only listened, his face calm but eyes wide with silent attention. Goran continued, his voice gaining strength with every word. One day, one of them escaped, a child, barely able to run. She stumbled into my path and fell crying. She looked at me, not with hate but with fear and hope. She thought I would help her, and in that moment, I broke. I sent her away, hid her among the trees, and then I returned to the base and destroyed the controls. I flooded the chambers and let the others escape. Leo finally spoke. That was the moment you became the peacemaker. Goran shook his head slowly. That was the moment I became the enemy to my own people. I was court-martialed, branded a traitor. The war ended, but not because of me. They said I had betrayed everything, but I knew I had saved something more important. My soul. Vale Lake shimmered as the first sun peeked over the horizon light, catching the small waves like tiny stars. Goran pointed out toward the center. Under that water still rests the old base. It is dead now, but the guilt still breathes. I fish here, not for food, but for forgiveness. Leo took a long breath and looked toward the same spot. Maybe it is not forgiveness you seek, but someone to understand. Before Goran could answer, the water shifted more than usual, not from wind, not from fish, but from something deep and slow. The ripples came in patterns, like vibrations from far below. Goran stood at once, his body tense. That is not right. The lake does not move like that. Leo felt it to a deep hum in the soles of his feet, like something ancient was waking up. He reached for his scanner and checked the readings. Faint pulses of energy rising from under the lake, power signatures not seen for decades. Goran's voice turned sharp. Turn that off. Now whatever you brought here, it triggered something. Leo quickly shut down the scanner, but the signals had already gone. The cube he brought yesterday, the one with his sister's story, had activated an old beacon buried under the lake. It had sent out a message, a call, or maybe a warning, and now someone out there knew where Goran was. The old alien turned and walked fast toward the cave, his movements faster now, driven by instinct and fear. Leo followed him. What is happening? Who will answer that signal? Goran's face was hard like stone, the kind of face only war and loss can make. The ones who still think I am dangerous, the ones who wanted me buried, not just forgotten. If they come here, they will not talk, they will burn. Leo stopped near the fire pit from last night and looked back at the peaceful lake. The water was still again, but the silence had changed. It was no longer the silence of peace, but the silence before a storm. Goran packed his few belongings quickly, a small blade, a communicator, an old medal that meant nothing now and then. He looked at Leo. You should leave. Go now, take your ship and fly far from here. But Leo stood firm, his eyes steady. I came here for you, not just for your story, but for what you still stand for. I won't run now. Goran studied him for a long moment, then gave a single nod, not of agreement, but of understanding. The storm would come, and they would face it together, not with armies or weapons, but with the truth of who they were, and what they had chosen long ago. Asterisk. The sky breaks open. The sky was clear at first, calm and wide above the twin suns, just beginning to cross paths, a sight that usually filled Goran with a strange kind of peace, but not today. Today he felt the air was too thin, the wind too quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Leo stood beside him, both of them staring at the lake that had returned to stillness, yet neither of them felt calm anymore. The pulse that came from below was gone, but its effect had already spread. Something had been awakened, something old and watching. Goran turned to Leo and spoke in a tone that held no emotion. Pack what you can, quickly. They will come fast, now, and when they do, they will not speak first. Leo did not argue. He moved back toward his small ship and began to check the systems. Everything still worked. The landing was soft, but he knew this was no longer a peaceful visit. This had become something else entirely, and it was because of the beacon he had brought, not knowing it would expose Gorana. Sound like thunder rolled across the sky, but there were no clouds. Just open blue, then a flash far above, a streak of red light cutting through the atmosphere, burning hotter and louder by the second. Leo looked up and saw it, a ship dropping like a spear. Its design was unlike anything he had seen, dark and sharp with glowing red fins that curved like blades. It was not a transport, it was not for peace, it was a hunter. Goran's hands clenched as the ship slowed above the lake, casting a long shadow across the water that seemed to pull all warmth from the land. He knew that ship. He had seen it once long ago, when it flew under a different name and served a different cause. It was a purge vessel meant for one thing: to erase, not to capture, not to warn, to destroy. The craft hovered for a moment, then descended with a hiss. Steam burst from its lower vents, and the grass around the lake bent from the pressure. The ramp opened slowly, revealing figures in black armor, tall and lean, their faces hidden by visors glowing red. Each held a weapon tight against their chest. Goran counted them silently, 10, no 11, including the one who walked in front, slightly taller, more decorated. A commander stepped forward, but Goran held out his arm. Stay behind me, they are not here for talk. The commander stepped onto the ground and looked straight at Goran. His voice came through a speaker. Cold and sharp. Goran, former general of the Selvic Order. You are charged with treason, desertion, and aiding enemy species. Your sentence remains death. Do you deny these charges? Goran stepped forward slowly, his back straight, his voice firm. I do not deny what I chose. I only regret I could not save more. The commander gave a signal to soldiers, moved to flank him, weapons raised. Goran did not move, but Leo stepped beside him now, the human's voice loud enough to echo across the water. He is no threat anymore. He lives alone. He hurt no one. Let him go. The commander turned his head slightly, his voice curious and amused. A human defender. Your species speaks boldly for a creature with no armor. No army, no fear, and yet you stand by a traitor. Why? Leo's voice was steady. Because I know who he really is, and I would rather die with a man of honor than live with cowards who hunt their own. There was a pause, then the commander lifted his hand, and the soldiers raised their rifles. Red lights forming on Goran's chest, but before a shot could fire, Goran moved not away, but forward. His hand reached into his coat and pulled a thin, curved blade, glowing blue. With energy, a relic from the war, it still hummed with power, forgotten but not broken. He held it low, and ready. I will not run, Goran said. I ran once, and it cost everything, but I will not kneel, not again. Leo's eyes widened as the old alien stepped forward, his stance calm, his body slow but sure. The soldiers fired the first shot. But Goran was faster. The blade swung through the beam, slicing it mid-air. Sparks flew as metal hit energy, and the air exploded with light. Leo ducked behind a rock, grabbing a piece of broken tech from his bag. It was a shield drone. He had built for mining, but it activated just in time. A wall of blue shimmered around him, deflecting a second blast. Goran meanwhile moved like a storm, his blade dancing through the soldiers, his old training returning like muscle memory, each move precise, each strike ending with another soldier on the ground. Stunned, not killed, never killed. The commander watched in silence, then stepped forward, drawing a sword of his own, not energy, but solid metal, heavy and cruel. Their blades met in the middle, with a crack of power and history colliding. Both warriors stood firm, one young and full of hate, the other old and full of truth. As they fought, the lake behind them rippled again, as if the battle stirred something beneath, and far in the distance, more ships were moving toward the horizon. But for now, this moment belonged to two fighters and the human who refused to leave. Old warrior. New flamme. Goran's blade moved like it had never aged. Each strike precise, each block full of control. The commander pushed forward with power and speed, but Goran used balance and memory. He was not faster, but he knew the rhythm of battle like the back of his hand. Leo watched from behind cover, heart pounding, his fingers tight on the edge of the rock. The other soldiers lay scattered, some unconscious, some crawling away. None dead, because Goran never killed if he could help it. That was part of his curse, or perhaps his pride. The clash of metal echoed across the lake. Water shook with every blow. Energy from the two blades crackled between them, as if the lake itself remembered who Goran used to be. The commander shouted words in his native tongue, words of betrayal and punishment, calling Goran a coward, a disgrace. But Goran said nothing. His silence was heavier than insults, his actions clearer than any defense. Then a moment came, a gap in movement. Goran's blade knocked aside the commander's strike and turned toward his chest, but Goran stopped. His hand froze in midair. Not because he couldn't kill, but because he still refused to. He stepped back, lowered his blade instead at the soldier before him. Enough, he said quietly. This fight will not end like the last war ended. But the commander was not done. He lifted his visor and revealed a face that made Goran step back in shock. It was a face from old photos, from a time before war, young, sharp, eyes burning with anger, but also full of sorrow. You do not recognize me. Goran blinked, slowly searching memory, until the truth hit him like a blade to the chest. Riva, he whispered, his voice cracking. You were a child. You cannot be. She said coldly. Your daughter, the one you left behind when you betrayed your oath. The one they told stories about, stories where you were a monster, a traitor, a man who ran from his people. She stepped closer, her sword down, but her anger rising. I joined the purge fleet to find you, not for justice, but for truth. And now I see it. You live by a lake. You fish like an old fool while your blood burns. In Megaron's knees almost gave way, but he stood firm. Tears did not come, but the pain in his face was clear. Leo stepped closer, unsure if this was the right time, but his voice was calm. I don't think he ever forgot you. He never stopped talking about what he lost. Striva turned sharply and aimed her weapon at Leo. Stay out of this, human. This is not your war. But Leo didn't move. I know it's not, but maybe it's time. Someone stood between hate and reason. He pointed at Goran. He didn't run because he was weak. He ran because he wanted peace, because he loved more than he hated. Maybe you came here to kill a traitor, but found something you didn't expect. She hesitated, blade trembling. Goran finally stepped forward slowly, eyes on her face. I thought you died, Riva. I left because I believed it would save lives, including yours. But I see now my silence left you to darkness. I failed you not because I ran, but because I never came back. Riva's face twitched, pain leaking through anger. You do not get to speak like a father now, not after so many years, not after what they Made me believe. Her voice cracked, and the weapon lowered just a bit. Leo saw the change and stepped between them again. Slowly he reached into his pack and pulled out the cube. The same memory device that started all of this, and placed it on the ground. Watch this, he said to Riva. It's from my sister. The day he saved her ship. It shows who he is, not who they told you. Riva picked up the cube with slow fingers, her eyes locked on Goran's. She activated the message, and a soft light filled the space, showing a hologram of a young medic speaking with tears in her eyes. About the alien commander who saved hundreds, the one who stayed behind so they could escape. She had never forgotten that face, and now neither could Riva. The light faded. Riva stood frozen, the lake quiet again. No soldiers moved, no weapons raised, only the whisper of wind between broken silence. Goran stood with his blade down, arms wide, not in defense, but in offering. You can choose what happens next. Riva, I will not fight you, not anymore. For a long moment, she said nothing, then slowly she dropped the blade. It hit the ground with a soft clang, and she stepped forward, not to attack, but to cry. Her arms wrapped around the old alien chest, and Goran embraced his daughter for the first time in decades. Leo looked away, giving them space, the sky above still lit by the glow of ships in the distance. But for now there was no war, only a family that had broken, but somehow found its flame again, in the ashes. Asterisk. The line that broke the wind moved gently across the lake now, not in warning, but like a breath finally exhaled. Goran held his daughter close, unsure if the moment was real, her armor cold against his skin, but her heart beat fast and full of pain. Riva did not speak, her arms shaking as years of anger, confusion, and grief flooded out without words. Leo stood a few steps away, watching in silence, not wanting to interrupt what should have happened long ago. Around them, the remaining soldiers stood, unsure of what to do. They had arrived to complete a mission, to hunt an enemy, but now that enemy stood weeping with their commander. The line between target and family had blurred, and their weapons hung awkwardly in their hands, like tools that no longer served a purpose. One of them finally lowered his gun, and others followed, unsure but unwilling to aim anymore. Riva stepped back, wiping her face with a trembling hand. She looked at her father, then at the troops who waited for her order. Her voice cracked but loud enough to hear. Return to the ship. We are done here. The soldiers hesitated. Not because they questioned her command, but because it felt too sudden, too unfinished. Riva turned to them again. This is no longer a battlefield, and if you disagree, you can leave on foot. They obeyed without another word, moving back toward the purge vessel. The engines still hot, the threat still humming in the sky. Goran looked at her confused and cautious. You told them to leave, are you? Sure, Riva nodded slowly. I came to kill you because I believed everything they told me, but now I realize they kept me angry, so I would never ask why. I see who you are now, father, not the monster they made, but a man who chose mercy when no one else did. Leo stepped beside them, placing a hand on Goran's back. Maybe now you can breathe again. But Goran shook his head gently. Not yet. He looked toward the hills beyond the lake, his eyes narrowing. They will not let this go. Someone received that signal, someone higher than her, someone who wants blood, and if they do not hear back, they will come, and they will not stop just because a daughter changed her mind. Riva looked at him seriously. Who do you mean? The circle, Goran said quietly. Not just one leader, but many old ones, the kind who sit in shadows and move fleets with whispers. They will send something worse, something that doesn't stop for tears or truth. Leo frowned. Then we need to get out of here now, warn others, or find a place to hide. But Goran stayed still. I ran once and hid for years. It brought nothing but silence and sorrow. I will not run again this time. I stand. Riva looked at the lake, then at the ship behind them. My ship is fast, but not built for war. If we stay, we must plan. We cannot win by force. Goran nodded. I know this land, every tree, every stone. We do not fight a battle, we delay, we send a new message, one of truth. Leo stepped forward with energy in his eyes. I can help. I brought a transmitter. Prototype, small but powerful, it can reach across sectors. If we broadcast your story with proof, it might be enough to slow them down, or confuse their orders. They moved fast, setting up near the cave, working through the night, while the moons rose high above. Riva removed parts of her armor, piece by piece, not to become weak, but to feel light again. She stood by the fire, watching her father move with steady hands, even after all these years. Leo tuned the transmitter, adjusting frequencies, weaving Goran's memory cube with visual feeds and files from the old purge system that Riva decrypted. When the message was ready, they stood together around the device. Goran recorded his voice, firm, not angry, but honest. I was once called general then. Traitor now. I speak as a father, as a witness, and as a soul, tired of running. My actions were never to betray, but to preserve life. Let this truth be seen. Let those who still believe in justice listen and question what they are told. Leo pressed send, and the signal burst into the stars, carrying more than data. It carried a story, a chance to break the line between lies and legacy. Riva looked up at the sky, her voice soft. Do you think they will believe it? Goran looked at her with pride. Maybe. Not all, but some will, and that is enough to begin. As the sun rose again over the lake, the water calm and the air thick with silence, not fear, but the kind that waits for something. New. Goran sat beside Leo and Riva, the three of them staring at the same horizon, no longer enemies, no longer lost, only bound by a truth too strong to kill, and a message too loud to ignore. The fisherman's legacy. The lake was quiet again, but this time, it was not hiding fear, it was holding hope. The ripples moved slow and steady as the early sun rose above the trees, painting the sky in colors of soft gold and warm orange. Goran sat on his stone fishing rod in hand, but he was not alone anymore. Riva sat beside him, her armor replaced by a simple dark robe, her hair pulled back, the sharp edge in her eyes softer. Now Leo walked toward them from the cave, holding a pack with supplies and a datapad already buzzing with incoming signals from across space. The message they had sent was spreading faster than they imagined, across colonies and ships, among soldiers and civilians. People were watching, listening. Some sent replies, messages of support, questions, disbelief, even threats, but the truth had reached them. It could no longer be hidden, and that meant change had begun, even if slow and uncertain. Riva scrolled through the responses, her voice quiet. They thought you were dead. Most of them, even those who hated you, had turned your name into a ghost story. Goran smiled without looking up. Perhaps I was dead. In a way, this place kept me breathing, but I was not alive, not until someone spoke to me like I mattered again. Leo sat down on the other side, dropping the pack with a sigh. You matter to a lot more people now. The truth cut through more than just lies. It gave people something they had not had in a long time, something to believe in. Goran reeled in his line slowly, the hook empty but his hand steady. He looked at Leo and Riva. Both of you have given me more than I thought I would ever see again. My daughter, my friend, my voice. I thought I would die forgotten, but now even if death comes, it will not be silence. A sound echoed from the forest, not loud, but strange enough to make them stand and listen. It was not mechanical, not a ship, it was footsteps. Slow and heavy, not hostile, but sure. A figure appeared between the trees, not in black armor, but in simple robes, gray and weathered, with a staff in hand. The face was old, alien like Goran, but different, long tendrils across the chin and eyes. Full of sorrow, the figure bowed slightly. I received your message, Goran, and I walked here from the outer valley. I am one of the 5 silent ones, keepers of old truths. Your voice has stirred something deep. The council cannot ignore it. No. Goran stood tall for the first time in years, like a warrior receiving a guest, not a visitor. This is no longer about me, he said. This is about every voice that was buried, and every choice made in shadows. The silent one nodded, and looked at Leo and Riva. Then back at Goran. You must come with me. Speak at the circle itself. They cannot strike you down in the open. Not when the galaxy is watching. They will try to twist the tale, but with your daughter, and this human beside you, the lie will not hold. Riva stepped forward. If we go together. I will stand for him, not as a soldier, but as his blood. And Leo added, and I will carry the message wherever it must go. I came here for a story. I am part of it now. Goran placed a hand on each of their shoulders, then looked back at the lake, the place that held his silence and shaped his truth one last time. He cast the line, the hook touched the water, and after a moment a small fish pulled back. He caught it gently and let it go back into the lake, smiling softly before turning away. They packed what they needed, the transmitter, the cube, the blade, not to fight, but to remind the journey would be long, and the danger still real. But this time, Goran would not walk it alone. They left the lake as 3, not as fugitives, but as witnesses, carrying a truth that had slept too long. And as the wind moved across the surface one last time, it whispered not of exile or death, but of something reborn. The lake had given him peace. Now it gave him purpose, and somewhere far above the stars shifted just a little, as if they too had listened to the fisherman's legacy.